In your flight through the night, many things you've seen. Put them in a book like Louis Ferdinand Céline. Allô, mes enfants, would you like to dance? Dance until the morning, without a backward glance. Allô, mes enfants, I think that you must dance. I know you'd like to sit it out, but you won't have the chance.
My revolt against the judgment I felt forming in me caused me to seek some way of escape. For some time, in appearances, my life continued as if nothing had changed. I was on rails and speeding ahead. As if purposely, people's praises increased. And that's just where the trouble came from. You remember the remark, "Woe to you when all men speak well of you"? Now, the one who said that spoke words of wisdom. Woe to me. Consequently, the engine began to have whims, inexplicable breakdowns. Then it was that the thought of death burst into my daily life. I would measure the years separating me from my end. I would look for examples of men of my age who were already dead. And I was tormented by the thought that I might not have time to accomplish my task. What task? I had no idea. Frankly, was what I was doing worth continuing? But that was not quite it. A ridiculous fear pursued me, in fact. One could not die without having confessed all one's lies. Not to God or to one of his representatives. I was above all that, as you can imagine. No, it was a matter of confessing to men, to a friend, to a beloved woman, for example. Otherwise, even if there were only one lie hidden in a life, death made it definitive. No one ever again would know the truth on this point, since the only one to know it was precisely the dead man sleeping on his secret. That absolute murder of a truth used to make me dizzy. Today, by the way, it would cause me instead subtle joys. The idea, for instance, that I am the only one to know what everyone is looking for, and that I have at my home an object which has kept the police of 3 countries on the run to no avail, is a sheer delight. But let's not go into that. At the time, I had not yet found the recipe, and I was fretting. I pulled myself together, of course. What did one man's lie matter in the history of generations? And what presumption to want to drag out into the full light of truth a paltry fraud lost in the sea of ages like a grain of sand in the ocean. I also told myself that the body's death, to judge from those I had seen, was in itself sufficient punishment, and that it absolved all. Salvation was one, that is, the right to disappear for good, in the sweat of the death agony. Nonetheless, the discomfort grew. Death was faithful at my bedside. I used to get up with it every morning, and compliments became more and more unbearable to me. It seemed to me that the falsehood increased with them so inordinately that never again could I put myself right. A day came when I could bear it no longer. My first reaction was excessive. Since I was a liar, I would reveal this and hurl my duplicity in the face of all those imbeciles, even before they discovered it. Provoked to truth, I would accept the challenge. In order to forestall the laughter, I dreamed of hurling myself into the general derision. In fact, it was still a question of dodging judgment. I wanted to put the laughers on my side, or at least to put myself on their side. I contemplated, for instance, jostling the blind on the street, and from the secret, unexpected joy this gave me, I recognised how much a part of my soul loathed them. I planned to puncture the tyres of wheelchairs, to go and shout "lousy proletarian" under the scaffoldings on which labourers were working, to smack infants in the subway. I dreamed of all that and did none of it. or if I did something of the sort, I've forgotten it. In any case, the word justice gave me strange fits of rage. I continued of necessity to use it in my speeches to the court, but I took my revenge by publicly inveighing against the humanitarian spirit. I announced the publication of a manifesto exposing the oppression that the oppressed inflict on decent people. One day while I was eating lobster at a terrace restaurant and a beggar bothered me, I called the proprietor to drive him away and loudly approved the words of that administrator of justice. "You are embarrassing people," he said. "Just put yourself in the place of these ladies and gents after all." Finally, I used to express to whoever would listen my regret that it was no longer possible to act like a certain Russian landowner whose character I admired. He would have a beating administered both to his peasants who bowed to him and those who didn't bow to him, in order to punish a boldness he considered equally impudent in both cases. However, I recall more serious excesses. I began to write an ode to the police and an apotheosis of the guillotine. Above all, I used to force myself to visit regularly the special cafes where our professional humanitarian free thinkers gathered. My good past record assured me of a welcome. There, without seeming to, I would let fly a forbidden expression. "Thank God," I would say, or more simply, "My God." You know what shy little children our cafe atheists are. A moment of amazement would follow that outrageous expression. They would look at one another dumbfounded. Then the tumult would burst forth. Some would flee the cafe, others would gabble indignantly without listening to anything, and all would writhe in convulsions like the devil in holy water. You must find all that rather childish. Yet maybe there was a more serious reason for those little jokes. I wanted to upset the game, and above all to destroy that flattering reputation, the thought of which threw me into a rage. "A man like you," people would say sweetly, and I would blanch. I didn't want their esteem because it wasn't general, and how could it be general when I couldn't share in it? Hence it was better to cover everything, judgment and esteem, with a cloak of ridicule. I had to liberate at all costs the feeling that was stifling me. In order to reveal to all eyes what he was made of, I wanted to break open the handsome wax figure I presented everywhere. For instance, I recall an informal lecture I had to give to a group of young fledgling lawyers. Irritated by the fantastic praises of the president of the bar who had introduced me, I couldn't resist long. I had begun with the enthusiasm and emotion expected of me, which I had no trouble in summoning up to order. But I suddenly began to advise alliance as a system of defence. Not, I said, the alliance perfected by modern inquisitions, which judged simultaneously a thief and an honest man, in order to crush the second under the crimes of the first. On the contrary, I meant to defend the thief by exposing the crimes of the honest man, the lawyer in this instance. I explained myself very clearly on this point. Let us suppose that I have accepted the defence of some pitiable citizen, a murderer through jealousy. Gentlemen of the jury, consider, I should say, how venial it is to get angry when one sees one's natural goodness put to the test by the malignity of the fair sex. Is it not more serious, on the contrary, to be on this side of the bar, on my own bench, without ever having been good or suffered from being duped? I am free, shielded from your severities. Yet who am I? A Louis XIV in pride, a billy goat for lust, a pharaoh for wrath, a king of laziness. I haven't killed anyone. Not yet, to be sure. But have I not let deserving creatures die? Maybe. And maybe I'm ready to do so again. Whereas this man, just look at him, will not do so again. He is still quite amazed to have accomplished what he has. This speech rather upset my young colleagues. After a moment they made up their minds to laugh at it. They became completely reassured when I got to my conclusion, in which I invoked the human individual and his supposed rights. That day habit won in the end. By repeating these pleasant indiscretions, I merely succeeded in disconcerting opinion somewhat, not in disarming it, least of all in disarming myself. The amazement I generally encountered in my listeners, their rather reticent embarrassment, somewhat like what you are displaying at the moment, no, don't protest, did not calm me at all. You see, it is not enough to accuse yourself in order to clear yourself. Otherwise I'd be as innocent as a lamb. One must accuse oneself in a certain way, which it took me considerable time to perfect. I did not discover it until I fell into the most utterly forlorn state. Until then, the laughter continued to drift my way, without my random efforts succeeding in divesting it of its benevolent, almost tender quality that hurt me. But the sea is rising, it seems to me. It won't be long before our boat leaves. The day is ending. Look, the doves are gathering up there. They're crowding against one another, hardly stirring, and the light is waning. Don't you think we should keep silent to enjoy this rather sinister moment? No? I interest you? You're very polite. Moreover, I now run the risk of really interesting you. Before explaining myself on the subject of Judge's penitent, I must talk to you of debauchery and of the little ease.